Cenk is the founder. He is the originator of the first and biggest online news network in all the world. He is on TYT. If you haven't checked him out, they are my brothers and sisters forever. How about it for Cenk Uygur, everybody? Cenk, you missed me doing my Cenk impression. I did about, I don't know, good 7 minutes of yelling at the heavens about this SCOTUS decision. I'd love, actually, even before we get into Biden, to get 2 seconds. I think it's an absolute open door to rising despotism.
Yeah, I think it depends on whether Sotomayor is perfectly accurate or not in her dissent. If she is, it's potentially a democracy-ending decision. If she isn't, then there's an argument to be made that it's normal. Okay, so let me explain real quick. If all the Supreme Court is saying is, hey, we got to figure out what's an official act and what's not an official act. So, for example, when Obama and Holder decided that you don't need judicial review to do a drone strike on an American citizen abroad, is that an official act or not an official act? Well, it's an official act. Okay, then you don't get to question, X, Y, or Z, right? Okay. By the way, I would disagree with that. I think that actually was murder, and it was totally wrong, and they should have been held accountable. But this decision makes it clear you cannot touch that, right? Whether it's Obama, Trump, or anyone else. But if Sotomayor is right, then what they could say is the election certification is an official act. So if in the middle of discussing whether to certify or not certify the election, the president instructed the staff to murder the vice president, well, it's an official act, so we can't look into it at all. So he has immunity for anything he does within the scope of that official act. Well, then democracy's over, because then you could just literally kill your political opponents and call it an official act. And so that sounds super extreme. And I can't imagine that even this lunatic Supreme Court intended that. But if they did, then we're all screwed.
The falsification of documents, though, Cenk, the instruction to falsify documents, that would be covered by the immunity they've described.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, so you see how they could, I mean, again, if they go over the top and murder somebody, I guess potentially maybe, but there are a lot of ways to do it in a more underhanded way,
No, but Mark, that's the thing, though. An illegal act is an illegal act. The question is, and it doesn't depend on the severity of the illegal act. The question is, can we look at it or can we not look at it? If we can't, once it enters the rubric of like an official act, does that mean we can't look at it at all? Like, not to find out if the documents were falsified or if the documents were burned or if the guy producing the documents was murdered. Like, we just can't look at it at all, right? If that's the case, we're totally screwed. If they just mean, hey, figure out if it's official or unofficial, and then we'll figure out the parameters of how much you could look into the official acts, okay, we'll survive. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally see it. No, I totally see it. Huffington Post is saying assassinations, coups, bribery, all on the table. I mean, it really does. It would seem, at minimum, open the door to a lot of corruption. In a world, and I'm talking about in a world, I'm talking about in the executive branch, which is already, I think, beginning to succumb to a lot of corruption. We saw a lot of it in the case of the last administration with the hotel, with the trademarks given to Ivanka, with the deals made by the Kushners and their family under the COVID, et cetera. There were a lot of payoffs all over the place. All right. Thank you for that. And now, why I have summoned you, sir, because I know that we vehemently disagree about Joe Biden and dropping from the ticket this guy who is already on the ticket at the last minute here for, you'll have to tell me, for some better choice that Democrats are scrambling for, given his performance on debate night.
Yeah. So, Mark, first thing I want to establish with your audience is, and I think I'm positive you'll agree, that we're both trying to beat Trump. The question is, what's the best way to beat Trump, right? Because a lot of times what I get back is, hey, you're criticizing Biden or you're hurting Biden, hence you're trying to help Trump. No, what I'm trying to do is have the best possible candidate against Trump so that we can actually have a way, way, way better chance of beating him, right? So now, having established that, I assume you agree, right?
Of course, and I'm just curious. I don't mean to cut right to the chase, but who would that person be?
Okay, so now once we establish that, then the question is the Democratic Party better off and can we beat Trump better if Biden stays or if Biden goes? And then the
Okay.
second layer to that is yes, but what is the process by which Biden goes and who would we pick? Because that's going to help determine whether we're better off with Biden or without Biden, right?
Exactly.
Right. So now the process is actually a really good news, really simple. So it's a convention like every convention we had through 1968. Delegates go, they're released to pick any nominee they like. They battle it out politically. The strongest one of them, at least the one that's better at politics internally, wins. They get the most number of delegates. They become our candidate. Easy peasy. The delegates have nothing to do with Kamala Harris. She's the vice president, would take over for the president if something were to happen to him. But the vice president has nothing to do with the campaign until it becomes the official campaign of the Democratic Party.
Well,
So
we'll get back to that in a moment, but you're right. From a pure rules standpoint, so far I'm with you.
yeah. So then you say, all right, well, the process of picking a new nominee would be a mess, is what most people say, right? And to which I, retort, so what? The question is it mess good or mess bad? Mess sounds bad, but what it really does is these days, especially, messes attract attention, lots and lots of attention. Right now, all of that attention is going to Democratic politicians and Democratic policies. That's beautiful. That's what you want before an election. You're going to get hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially billions of dollars in free media. Now, you say, well, but they're going to argue against one another. Yeah, that's called politics. And so what?
Let me just, I'm sorry, I want to let you make your full point, but I really, because I see a couple of points, I just got to jump in. So let me just jump in on that one and say, one of the things I think that is an asset for the Democrats, and Joe Biden in this case, is that Trump is unhinged and his rhetoric is more and more to the base. You saw it on debate night. He can't help himself. He is so extreme in his rhetoric that I really don't want the media attention on the mess that is the Democratic politics, the back and forth, the policy. I want the media on the attention of Trump because he is, I think, as revealed to independent voters and swing voters, I think he is not singing from the hymnal that they're singing from. He'll talk about Roe v. Wade. He'll talk about things that they find loathsome, that they don't support. And it will remind them of the Trump presidency. What you're describing is a process that will take that spotlight and put it on the Democrats. And again, Trump cruises.
So, Mark, there's two different stages of the campaign. One is through the convention and one is after the convention. So through the convention, we have a mess already. We don't have a choice about it. And already no one is talking about Trump. Everyone is talking about Biden.
I agree.
And
I agree.
So we're already at a terminal point. Like it could only get better from here. And then after the convention, once you've picked your candidate, the focus goes back on Trump because so that to jump forward a little bit to answer your earlier question. So who should we pick? Someone who is going to check off the boxes that we need. I would argue that Gretchen Whitmer is probably the place we start. Why? Governor of a swing state, fairly popular, fairly boring, but young and can finish a sentence. Would help to highlight. But these are this is the sorry state of the Democratic Party, right?
Right.
Under Biden. And so, and she can highlight the woman's right to choose and be a great juxtaposition to Trump. But she's boring enough that the focus goes back onto Trump. And so people then aren't voting against Biden, which is currently the state of affairs. They're voting against Trump. That's what we want, right? If you pick Gavin Newsom, well, then it's 50-50 because there's a lot to attack on Gavin Newsom. And now we're talking about California. We're talking about French laundry. We're talking about how slick he is. And then it gets muddled, right? But I
agree. And I think you make a really compelling argument for Whitman. Let me just ask you how you would handle the blowback on jumping over Kamala Harris.
Easy. So number one, she has no claim to those delegates officially, unofficially, through the charter in any way, shape, or form. Right?
I'm not talking delegate wise. I'm just talking about you're skipping over a woman of color now to get to
Yeah. No, but
the white
question
woman
is,
from the Midwest.
so, Mark, that's the question, though. Who is skipping over her? Nobody's skipping over her. The delegates are going to get to choose. So she can go in there and make the case. And if I'm her, I'm going to win that case. Are you kidding me? I'm the sitting vice president. That convention is going to pick me, right? But if she can't convince them of that, then she doesn't deserve it. So what do you want us to do? Give it to someone who didn't earn it? Based on identity politics, that's ludicrous.
That's how she got the job to begin with. To be perfectly honest, that's how she got to be vice president.
But Mark,
keeping it real.
Yeah, I know, but that was weak and it was wrong, and
I
now
agree.
we see it because she's a mess.
I
And
agree.
so we're not going to do that again. And by the way, when Reverend Warnock is running and Wes Moore is running potentially to get these delegates, and they're getting votes over Kamala Harris, or that she's getting more votes, which part of this discriminates against African Americans? When Whitmer wins the delegate count, if I'm right, how do we discriminate against women? Like, this is absurd. This is just saying that identity politics should stop us from doing something rational, even if it was going to get to a black candidate anyway, or a female candidate anyway. It's beyond absurd. So we're not skipping over her. She has every right to get those delegates as anyone does.
Cenk, let me ask you about Biden before. I know we're already at the convention and he's already in some home somewhere in our little narrative. But let me ask you about Biden. It's not as though this guy is weekend at Bernie's. I mean, he went to G7, he went to the G20, he went to his record has been impressive. He got rid of. He got rid of that entire thing that Trump had promised, which was the discussion about a package that would involve infrastructure. He actually put together a bipartisan package that actually brought infrastructure to bear. He brought within that package I didn't love it. I wish there'd been more. The negotiation on drug prices. His administration, he's handled COVID, I thought, very, very well. And in fact, he handled COVID relief, et cetera. That was quite complex. He handled it, I thought, both honestly and he handled it effectively. As you look at his track record, and as I say, just in the last month, he's gone to these various conferences across Europe, across the globe. It's not as though the guy is unable to do something. And the first thing he did was beat Donald Trump the first time.
Yeah. So let's take this in three stages. What Biden has done so far, what his current state is, what we think his current state is, and then what the American people think his current state is. Okay. So what he's done in the past at this point, unfortunately, is not that relevant. If we had a normal campaign, it would be super relevant. Hey, this is my record. This is where I stand. But people will say, hey, listen, maybe back in 2021 and 2022, he still was in really good shape and he helped to get these measures passed. And we could debate how much we like or don't like those measures. But I just saw him with my own eyes at the debate, and he's not the same guy. Even if he was Superman in 2022, he no longer is. And
so
we
think he was that same guy at the G7?
So, look, Mark, the reality is, in my opinion,
it doesn't matter. Everybody remembers Thursday night, is what you're saying.
No, that's also true. We're going to get to that third. But
okay.
But Mark, the reality is that the president is not Superman. Democrat, Republican, Biden, Obama, it doesn't matter. They have a giant administrative state around them. And they're not just a figurehead. They make important decisions, right? And people execute those decisions. So, for example, Obama made the decision to stay in Afghanistan. Biden made the decision to get out of Afghanistan. Those were seminal decisions. By the way, I agree with Biden more than I agree with Obama on that, right? But then the administrative state executes it, right? So when you go to the G7, all of those policies were already adjudicated by the administrative state. It's not the deep state like the right wing talks about. It's just like the administrative state ran the country almost entirely when Trump was in charge, because he's a moron.
He's on the golf course.
Worked 1 hour a day, right?
But
So you could say, hey,
okay.
Trump went to the G7, but he doesn't know a thing about the G7 because of the
But aren't
administration.
I hiring, Cenk, that administrative state? I'm hiring the one that got
Yeah,
the CHIPS Act passed, the veterans relief package passed. That's the package of guys that I'm hiring, guys
yeah,
generically. Yeah.
yeah. But so well, that's going to get us to point three in a second. But one last thing about that, Mark. Yes, but that administrative state would be very similar under President Shapiro, President Bashir, President Whitmer, all these Democratic governors. It would be near identical, right? So a couple of people would be moved around a little bit, but overall, you have a competent administrative state in almost any Democratic administration. So that's part of the package. So then when you go to the most important part, yes, this is maybe what you and I think, and maybe we could have a debate about whether we think he was competent enough at the G7, et cetera. But what do the American people think is they're going to decide? And you saw the CBS poll that came out yesterday. 72% think that he is not mentally or cognitively healthy enough to be president. 72% think that he should not be the candidate. He should not run for president. When 7 out of 10 Americans say you shouldn't run, and we think you might not be mentally capable of being president, you have approximately a 0% chance of winning. That's just the reality.
Yeah. The truth is, though, that there it is. Have the mental and cognitive health to serve as president. I think Tony has the mental and cognitive health to serve as president. I don't want Tony, our producer on this show and tech organizer, to be president. In meaning, when you actually get into the polling place, Cenk, and it's Trump and it's Biden and his staff propping him up for photo ops, and Trump and his staff working new ways in which they can seize power and stuff money in their pockets and poison our world. I think people vote for Biden.
Yeah. But remember, Trump is the Republican candidate no matter who the Democratic candidate is. So why are we sacrificing potentially up to 10 points? So if you just Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, let's say he's a swing state, boring, but young, smart, etc. Right?
And nobody knows him.
No, that's okay, because you're voting against Trump. You're voting for the Democratic competence versus Trump. So the problem is that when they get into that voting booth, if they're not voting against Trump, they're voting against Biden because they think he's too old and can't get the job done. Then we're screwed. Then there goes our advantage of being up against Trump. Do you see what I'm saying?
We're going to be up against Trump
no matter what.
I mean, by that argument, I can pretty much put up, any Democratic candidate, and
That's right.
and they'll have that momentum, the momentum that I've described, to be Trump. That is to say, the anti-Trump vote, if you want to think of it that way.
That's absolutely right. Look, some are better than others. So,
I
now
wonder
putting
how,
on my progressive hat, but also being honest, I think that Bernie would landslide Trump, but I know that the delegates are not going to think that, and I know the establishment is not going to think that. And Bernie's very old. That's another giant disadvantage for Bernie, right? So that's not going to happen. It's going to be an establishment governor type of person. But imagine Jamie Raskin being on the ticket, a really smart guy. Terrific.
You'll need a guy in Joe Biden. Sadly, now this is the practical part of it, and you'll need a guy in Joe Biden who actually will have to step down. I mean, it's his act to perform, right? To step down. And, people can counsel him, people can talk to them, whatever. There was all the talk over the weekend while they're getting together at Camp David. That was a planned family meeting, the Camp David thing. It wasn't like they all huddled and, oh my God, we got to make a decision. There was a Vogue shoot or a Vanity Fair shoot that they were doing that same weekend. So I don't know, Cenk. It's you make very compelling points, and as usual, you make them so well. It's awful. I really think the wolf is at the door, and I can't believe that we are in the situation we're in. But I really appreciate you spending some time with us today, and thank you for not yelling at me. I mean, I'm so used to seeing you yell on Piers Morgan. You're yelling all the time. Here, you brought up a sense of civility. So thank you. Check out Cenk on TYT. They're live every afternoon and evening on the East Coast. And I love what you do, pal. Thank you so much. See you, Cenk.
Thank you, Mark.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.